Or even better, we'll go to the more righteous version. Oh well, maybe then consciousness won't be liberated through the wisdom that's passing through. The perfection will cease to exist through this avenue, whatever it happens to be. We move through these things, me and Ray, all the time. Doubt, worry, fear, anything. It can be difficult. It can be difficult to move through doubt, worry, and fear, insecurity. Where do you go once it comes? Well, once it's there, you probably don't want to talk about it because you probably have the other things still occurring too, the confidence. And you're like, oh no, this is in direct threat of confidence. Direct threat. Okay, so I'm going to hold confidence instead. Get rid of this doubt, okay? And it's easy. I just keep the doubt in the periphery, and it just stays over there. And then I just present myself from this authentic chord shape I'm absolutely creating on my own here, this complete false identity. I'm holding this confidence now. Even though doubt's there, I'm only the confidence, the one before, the preferred one. Yes, okay. We'll continue the channel. We'll jump back and forth. We'll say, hey, when I said that this, when I said that this, when I said that, these are disclaimers. These are things that bring confidence into the articulation of these moments. And these were what make me look like a desirable teacher and man in the world. And so here we are. We're going back to these things, these confident things. And we're going to move on from that. Now, if I would have done that in this video, if I would have actually brought ourselves to that kind of a place, then I guess I would have continued in grace and confidence and moving along all nice. I might have even silenced that expression and not allowed it to come through. Because, I mean, why would it come through? It's awful, it's terrible, it's disgusting, it's wrong. And so I won't let it come through, And upon not letting it come through, that's the identity. That's how you identify with it. And so you see, we've had this really brilliant thing just happen to us. This is something that happens to me quite often. To where all of a sudden I will say something. Or something will happen in the flow. And because it's happened, it would have been maybe able to be seen as a mistake or a mistaken chord shape, like an undesirable expression or remark. And because it was actually kind of an undesirable expression or remark, we actually get to talk more about it. We get to move all through things. Now, if I saw it as the undesirable in a certain way, I could have went away into the confident channel. We're over here in confidence, talking about all the wisdoms of the world. But that thing got left there. And so actually, these two things have existed side by side one another and have been hanging out with each other the whole time. So there's been two things going on from that point forward. And we said that there was only one thing going on, but there was the doubt that happened. And so that's hanging out the whole time. We're just not talking about it. And so we've gone in this kind of inauthenticity over here into this place of trust and confidence. When really, over here is where something else could have happened, when doubt and confidence were hanging out. When they were hanging out, they could actually be confident and doubtful at the same time together, and an amazing thing would come through. And so we've had this strange dissonance in our chord shape. We talked about a 16-year-old girl having sex with her or whatever. And we didn't talk about that as like a positive thing or something that's cool or something that we do, but we talked about it in the manner of just it coming up in a realm of non-judging expression. I guess talking about how I don't know what it is that something needs to do to realize itself. And now this seems quite harsh and awful and terrible. Just like war or something like this, you'd say war and say, oh, it's awful, negative, terrible, disgusting, blood splattering everywhere, just the worst harshness ever, just human on human violence and the most utter atrocity you could ever imagine, and huge, massive waves and ripples. And I understand that, it's just definitely something that I look at and I think to myself, this is undesirable. This is something that I wish would end, would cease. And for a long time I thought, maybe I could make it cease, and that would be beneficial. And that is something that a lot of wisdoms probably portray, a possibility of it being beneficial, if all these things would cease. But there's wisdoms in the world that show that it's not possible for us to grow without these strange agitations in chord shape occurring. And so it's actually because of these darknesses that growth can happen. Now, as we continue to grow and expand in our life, we will find that we move away from the fear of flight motivation and into one of of joy and happiness in a certain sense, you know, and a way of like following our bliss in a certain sense. But this is not something that was previously capable without these other mistaken chord shapes being present. And so eventually we'll be able to see how everything in life is necessary for the time in which it's occurring. And if it ever were to cease being relevant in the reflections of life, meaning we no longer experience it, it would simply be reflective of how we no longer need that for our growth. And we probably have had that in our lives. Maybe you've been raped, maybe you've been murdered, or maybe somebody's done terrible things to you. And maybe you've come to a point in your path where you can see how in some way that was necessary for you to be who you are today, and help in the ways in which you've been able to help, or have conversation in the ways you've been able to have conversation, come into some writing of the core structure of your being that was a benefit. You know, you may be able to find this. Now, in your experience, if you have been able to find this, it's probable that you've had a less catastrophic experience than a lot of people that you can view. And so, microcosmically, you've had the same thing occur in a very tiny way, in a way of great sensitivity, and maybe a less harshness than what you're viewing it around you. And for you, you may think, oh, thank goodness, you know, but you may still be able to see it was a benefit. Now, you can relate that information to anybody in the chord structures and the levels of harshness and sensitivity in which they're viewing to be the same, except for it appears much differently. You know, for you, we could have whispered the truth towards you. But for another person, they're a hard hearer, you know, and so they need to be yelled at in order for them to hear it. And it's a different thing. And everything around them is being affected in a really amazing way by this. So understanding non-duality, we can come into the understandings of how all of these things are perfections. Now, they may be undesirable by us eventually, like, okay, I would wish for this to change, perhaps. That's very beautiful. And maybe you know how it should change. Maybe I come up to you when I stop you from going into this room, and something else happens. That's beautiful. And maybe I stopped you because I believed that was what you needed. But as it turns out, if you would have went into that room and get beaten up or whatever happens when you go into that room, that was actually the thing that was going to accelerate you through the karmas of your life into a higher rate of acceleration and liberation than ever before. So I might have taken you from that door, and now you're with me. All right, great. But now you no longer have the agitation necessary to relieve the karmas, the suffering within you well enough to polish the mirror for you quickly enough to bring you to liberation. So now, 1,000 lifetimes later, you can realize, because you've finally been brought to the causal conditions necessary to bring you to be beat up by the people in that room. And now that you've been beaten up by the people in the room, you've realized something that you needed to realize in some way that I was completely unsure. I had no idea that you needed to realize that. I didn't know the entire process of your mind stream. I didn't know how many thousands of past lives this has happened, and that has happened, and that has happened to bring you to this point in this moment to see whatever it is that you happen to have to see in order to bring yourself to being. So I don't know. So I don't know what's good for the world until I look at the world and I see, oh, okay, this is what's happening, and this is what's happening, and this is what's happening. And because I know that everything is constantly for and never against, I can see that no matter what it is that I view in the mirror, it's for us, and it's not against us. And so maybe it's rape of a child, or maybe it's rape of a person, or maybe it's murder of this man, or maybe it's a war in this way, maybe it's an ignorance in that manner, maybe it's a guy punching me in the face for saying this to you guys on this video, I don't know. Whatever it is, it's for me and not against me. It's for my highest benefit. This is something that's been coming into us huge ways and giant stirrings and stabilities, which brought me to the confidence to be able to even speak this to you now. I'm really surprised at the length and duration of this video, and also the difference in feeling from the last video that we made. The last video that we made was quite confident, quite good feeling, quite wonderful, quite this, quite that. I feel now a very big amount of doubt and insecurity. I feel all kinds of agitations in the flow of wondering, oh, are we still in a place that makes sense, or do we stop the video now and just give up on it and say, geez, this video sucks. I don't know where the channel led me today. All I can remember now is the reverberation of the chord shape that said 16-year-old girl and little boy. And I'm like, oh jeez, this is awful. Usually I bring harshnesses into focus, but I usually stray away from the pedophilia harshnesses because I know those are the greatest of sensitivities in the world. And I do also know that the only reason for these chord shapes, well, many reasons, um, but the volatility that causes such an expression to occur is because of suppression. And so if we don't suppress ourselves in any way, we'll never identify with an energy that creates it to have to occur in volatility. And that's wonderful, obviously. And so I do realize that the reason why these things are happening, not only because of perfection, but also because pieces within us are unable to see themselves as all of themselves, and so they suppress large amounts of themselves until those parts of themselves can no longer be suppressed because they're moving with everything in really powerful, amazing wisdom ways. And so eventually, as you're building up all this energy that you're pulling in from everything around you, because you're a constant, amazing, empty superconductor for all of the world around you, eventually it starts to push through those channels that are extremely clenched, and that causes a high rate of resistance, a huge shaking and agitation of the system, and that causes the ability to have an energy that was extremely suppressed now come through to be expressed, but through a suppression, and so it now has to occur in some way of volatility. And the volatility, again, is a judgment based on the expression. There is a way to appear in non-duality that it would no longer be able to be viewed as a volatility, just simply a way in which things are occurring. And so this brings into a realm of expression isness, just being is being. And if everything simply is in this way, then there really is nothing to be judging as doing anything else but simply being. However, being is being in the moment that being happens to be being it's being in. And that'll be part of the way in which we lead into these kinds of things. So there's harshnesses, there's this, there's that, there's volatility, there's all kinds of different ways in which we can express ourselves here perfectly in oneness. Now, there's a reason to be able to see what happens when we suppress an energy and how it becomes volatility, and we may think that this isn't a perfection. Why even have this? Well, the volatility, the suppression, all of these things are actually extremely important, perfect ways in which expression itself expresses itself in equanimity and for the benefit of everything. You may think that you would move if you were comfortable, but as it turns out, usually you don't move and grow when you're comfortable. You just sit there quite relaxed in your comfortable positioning, maybe getting a blowjob or drinking a smoothie, watching a show, a flick, I don't know, whatever it is that you may happen to think, well, now I'm perfect, I don't need anything else, good to go. Well, consciousness is a constant growing mechanism, and it's not going to allow you to take your preference and your comfortability in that way. A lot of traditions and religions have done that throughout time, and they've decided to hit a point of stagnation, a point of plateau. And plenty of exercise artists have found this possible. If you do push-ups every day, all day, eventually push-ups no longer make you stronger. You've done push-ups a lot. Your body's quite used to push-ups. You're going to have to maybe add something your body isn't used to. Work those muscles it doesn't usually work. So that's kind of what consciousness is doing. It's providing a muscle confusion to the liberation of your consciousness. Okay, and that's the sand mandala effect too. Oh, I've got to this perfect place. Gone. No more perfect place. Okay, do another thing. Oh, shoot. Okay, here we go. And then you get to this perfect place. Oh, gone. Now, eventually, through reaching these channels of flow where you begin and you get to this end of perfect place, you start to realize that the entire journey from low to high was all perfect. It all led you to that perfect place, and it was all a beautiful, necessary thing. Now you don't have to hold on to this sand mandala. Doesn't matter. You're creating the sand mandala. That's a beautiful thing. There we go. We got it again. Oh, there we go. We got it again. No matter which way I go, I got it. In fact, in every step in my placement, I was always with that perfect thing. Now, that's amazing. Phenomenal. Shows you the whole route of life, this. We'll have to release our judgments. Without that, we won't be able to do it. We won't be able to say this. We won't be able to say that. We'll have to control and govern the flow. These teachers, I don't know what they talk about perfection, about this, about that. One teacher showed that there's a demon within a man. He called it a demon. A demon. It's crazy. This is one of the enlightened masters of the world calling it a demon. Not even explaining what a demon is, just acting like everybody in the world knows what a demon is. I have to imagine this person has no idea what actually is going on, but he's residing over thousands of people as a teacher. It's amazing. And this is cool. In some way, bringing in those harder chord shapes kind of filters out my audience. You know, there are some people that will hear exactly what I've said just then and immediately turn away from this broadcast. And maybe there are people that will not. Maybe everybody will. Either way, it does not matter. I'm quite surprised that we've spoken for so long, honestly. I really thought I was going to back out of this sooner. I actually did not realize that we would be making the video when she started to set up the stand, even though we were having a very powerful channel come through. And yeah, I have to tell you, I have a ridiculous amount of insecurity and doubt based on those two statements in chord structure, but they came out of the spontaneous flow in the moment, out of the breath itself, and so the breath decided for this. And so when I have doubt or insecurity or any of these things, I move it out. When you have doubt, move it out. How do you do that? Well, you don't start a fight or resistance. This is explained in many meditation practices that you cannot do this. You cannot fight the thoughts, and this is the same with any emotion or feeling or anything that happens to be coming upon you. It could be all expressed or thought of as a thought, no problem. But the only way that I've seen is through radical acceptance, you know, through the expression of things. The only way that I would be able to express anything that comes to me is if I don't identify with it. Now, if I identify with it, maybe I could still express it, but I would have to probably have some kind of like positive identification typically. Sometimes you can identify with something and still express it out, finding that your identity of it was gone upon expressing it. So that's no problem. You know, I guess you could identify or not identify, it'd be fine. But you would have to be willing to work through the very simple process that is expression, that is honesty. And this can be a very difficult one. You may begin doing this and find that there's no end. That you have so much doubt that it will not just work itself out through expressing it once. That you may have to express it a million times, you know. And there's a good reason for this part of expression. This effortless expression I'm talking about, this kind of practice, is one that is extremely fast. It's the fastest one I've ever seen. I've not seen anyone else go faster. And I have met many people. I've met many teachers. I have been able to channel teachings from many teachers. And I have been able to see many things through this thing of effortless expression, just allowing yourself to be honest and authentic in every moment. And it is quite the process. I am quite well developed at this time to allow it to move with this kind of fluidity. At any moment, it actually could move with this fluidity. You would have to trust yourself completely and not identify with things, and also be able to be present for a certain amount of time. If you're judging of emotions, of chord shapes, of structures in any kind of a manner, then anything you say can cause yourself to observe it. And you may observe it where you create all kinds of new sentences of your observance, and you follow into that for a long time, and then, you know, maybe you get back to the original one or not, who knows. Either way, it will be perfect. But for us, we found that just through the strange expression of these things, so I've gotten myself into places of great doubt and great insecurity, and what do I do at those times? I start talking about how doubtful I am. I start talking about how insecure I am. I start talking about why I'm insecure. And then I start talking about why I'm insecure about that insecurity and what it means and all these different things and how I don't like it and how I wish it would go away and all this and all that and all this and all that. And what ends it is the acceptance of it. But no, I cannot make it go away. No, I cannot force it out of my system. No, I can't do anything to make it, manipulate it, control it, you know, resist it. It turns out that, yes, here it is, I am it. And as I become it, and become okay with it, and I breathe through, and I express all the different things, I eventually get to bring myself to places of expression that make perfect sense, but it doesn't mean that it goes away. I'd be like, oh, but I'm perfect, oh, that I trust, oh, that this, and I begin to fight this thing. And none of them override it in a way that make it go away. The only thing that can make doubt go away is by feeling the doubt. This is teaching by Osho I mentioned in the last video. You're feeling depressed and lonely? Good. Feel depressed and lonely. Go ahead, just own it. Just be that. I am depressed and lonely. Just go ahead, just be that forever. Be that for the rest of your life. You may find that upon accepting yourself as this thing, that you set it up immediately to the law of impermanence and has no choice but to change. It's amazing, this. It's true, it does work. And we say immediately, but to come into acceptance of a flow is actually much more difficult than you may actually imagine. You may be accepting it in order to get it to go away. That's not accepting it. It's not the same. So accepting a flow is kind of like a really hard place to come to in some way. My expression is usually quite defeated at the end of it. I'm like, there's nothing I can do. I've been trying to force it away through expression. I'm like, I'm going to express this shit out of me, and it's not working. But I do express everything that I need to express. Then I come to a point where expression is no longer. And I'm kind of don't have a lot of things to express. I'm just kind of irritated and frustrated with it in some way, but kind of defeated in a manner of giving up. Well, there's nothing I can do, obviously. It usually will move itself in that way. All of a sudden, I've given up, which is kind of like a form of acceptance in a way. Like, okay, I'm done fighting this thing. Fine, here it is. Shit. And again, once you've done it one time, you may try to bring yourself immediately to the end result, where you're coming into the acceptance of it, and you're just going to be it. But you didn't go through the process that happened previous, which was the expression of it, because this time you tried to jump to the middle or to the end. And that's cool, you can do that. But you may find that it's extremely hard to move out unless you go through the entire process again and again and again. And so I always immediately start from the point of expression. I'm feeling very doubtful. I'm feeling very this. And I may actually start in the first place of the resistance of it. Oh shit. I'm getting doubtful, but I don't want to be doubtful. Oh no, don't make me doubtful. I'm going to be the worst person ever. They're going to think I'm doubtful. They're going to think that I'm not a centered guru, that I'm not an amazing master of energy, that I have no channel that is really amazingly able to be focused on in a way of benefit. They will look at me as an idiot. All of these things, and that's no problem. And I just express those things. And anything that comes up extra, I can just express that. Express. Radical honesty. And maybe I come to no logical conclusion, but I want to. No problem. I'm an idiot. I have no amazing intelligence. Fine. I let it all go. You may find as soon as you're not worried about being smart, that you're quite smart. That you're right on time. That something is speaking through you that is not the you that you were previously identifying with, and that thing is highly intelligent. And so the reason I can sit through this amazing amount of doubt and insecurity on a camera with you today is because I have trust. Now you could say, should I trust right now? Who do I trust? What do I trust? Do I trust God? I trust this? I trust that? You can definitely go and trust and find that trust will definitely beget itself no matter what. If you walk in faith due to this thing you think you're trusting God or Jesus or Krishna or Buddha or any other tradition or whatever, you trust this rock and you have all your faith in this rock, you may find that trust proves itself to you. And so now you can start saying, oh, well, I started to trust this rock, and then everything in my life started coming together really well. I really think that this rock is God. It must be this rock that's causing this. Oh, thank goodness for this rock. And now we built a shrine around the rock. Everybody's coming trusting the rock. Everybody wants to trust the rock. And they're all having amazing signs from the trust of the rock. It's amazing this. I've seen this illusion happen all the time. It really confuses people, but it's a really beautiful perfection. I've been able to notice it as well, and it's been able to help me route ways to teach and bring into experience the articulation of reality and how we can become free from these really mundane statements. I will say that rocks are amazing. I call them stone people myself, actually. And they're phenomenal elder spirits, really powerful, wise, big pieces of consciousness. I feel very grateful and gracious, really honored to be able to sit with them. I always thank the stone people. They were here first. They came before us all. They move differently than us. They're amazingly patient. They're wise elders, phenomenal respect I have for them and for all of the land and for all beings everywhere without one exception. In a way of equanimity, I don't take them to be higher than me or to be less than me. I take us all to be in an equal playing field in a really amazing manner, but it doesn't mean that I don't bow my head in humble respect of all that is, as I do. I do not do so because I am required to. I do not do so at a time in which it appears necessary to prove anything to anybody. I do not sit here and give a boastful, loud prayer in front of the world in order to show them how amazingly awesome I am and to prove to everything how great I am and how amazingly efficiently with them I am. No, I speak to them like I would speak to me. And I do speak quite kind and respectfully to myself. I love myself. And still, when it comes up, when prayer comes up, prayer comes up. That's when I pray. And if intention is set, then I set intention then. There are times when I will always set intention. That's because I have been moved into a great place of respect and reverence for all of life in a way that shows a great necessity. So you could even say it's a great fear and intimidation that causes me to tremble, weak at the knees, and cause this form of reverence and intention. Medicine teachers have shown me entire worlds, entire solid realities that could wipe me out in any moment. I have a respect for them that would equal that of the fear of God, and what they say in Christianity, that my mouth dropped right to the ground, and I look at them in the most humble and vulnerable, fearful, awe-inspired way. I've been moved to great places of the fear of God, of my face to the ground, in a way. And so I have a great respect for these teachers, and I know what it is to go into them. I know what they can show you and what they can bring to. When I hear somebody talk about DMT or LSD consciousness in a way of dissonance, in a way of arrogance, in a way of unknowing, disrespecting these amazing teachers, these phenomenal bodhisattvas that have come here to bring us to liberation much more quickly and swiftly than ever before possible. I just say, wow, what an ignorance, what a childish statement. What a lazy way in which to view a place where you must be reverberating the stories of an elder or some other person you've heard from. You've never experienced it yourself. You're just talking me a story of your fear. But for me, I've never seen a more beautiful mirror than these teachers. So for me, I have the greatest of reverence. If there was anything closer to God in the physical manifestation, I would not know it. The way DMT hooks you with the most amazing transcendental pieces of consciousness, the tiniest of all geometries, it can take you anywhere.